Yeah, we are live, guys. There will be a lag of 10 seconds, but you can get started with the introduction. Yeah.
Can I share my screen now? Website.
Yeah, please share the screen.
Okay, so we're good to go, right?
Yes, we are live, so we can get started.
So, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our Step and Quiz Prelims. This is our first venture, and we are absolutely happy to have this on this platform and have all of you participate. So, this will be our prelims, and we expect to go on for roughly 45 minutes. So, that's all for now. Let's, without further ado, let's quickly get to the rules of the prelims. So 20 questions, as is the standard. 16 to 20 are two-part questions. For the attention of the participants, we have filled it as you have to fill your answers as 16A, 16B, 17A, 17B, and so on for the last 5 questions. That's a total of 25 points are at stake. Questions 11 to 15 are star marked and will be considered in case of a tie. So if anyone is unfamiliar, if there is a tie between two teams, then we'll check which teams have scored the highest from questions 11 to 15. Absolutely no negatives. Feel free to guess. So all that is there. Please do not Google. It's genuinely not cool and totally not an acceptable thing. If it is found that anyone has indulged in a malpractice, then we will have no choice but to bar them from the competition. The answers to be submitted via the Google form. The Google form links have been shared to all the participants. Please use them to submit the answers. All the necessary details can be filled in them. Please ensure that you are filling all the necessary details in advance so that you're not scrambling at the end. So please fill details like if you have a team name, you can fill the team name. And furthermore, if you have to fill your team number, and then you can start answering the questions. That's it for the prelims. We'll take top 8 teams to the finals. And yeah, that's it. We'll take top 8 teams to the finals.
And about the Google Forms, we'll be closing the Google Forms 90 seconds after the prelims.
Yeah, so we'll do the 20 questions of the prelims, and then there will be a rollback. In the rollback, you can check through any missing parts of your answers, and you can fill them up. And then we'll give you exactly 90 seconds. We'll close up the prelims, and then we'll quickly discuss the answers. So that's how today's prelims are going to be. So I hope all of you enjoy this set as much as we enjoyed putting our efforts into setting them, these questions. So that's it for the rules and regulations part of it. If any of the participants have any concerns, please let us know via WhatsApp and we will be taking it up right away. So that's that. Nambita, do we have enough views to get started?
Yeah, we can get started. Close to 44 people are watching. You can start with the questions.
Okay, lovely. So I guess we can get started. So without further ado, here comes the first question of the prelims of Step and Quiz. So the blank phenomenon is a situation described in behavioral economics, wherein investors seek to avoid negative financial information. So this phenomenon borrows its name from a myth surrounding a certain creature, which is linked to that creature avoiding certain conditions by doing something. So essentially, there is a myth about the creature. All I need is the name of that creature. Blanks are always indicated throughout the quiz. So the creature avoids certain conditions by doing something. And so the behavioral economic situation of investors avoiding negative financial information has been compared to this one, this phenomenon, this creature, thereby lending the phenomenon's name. It's very simple, very well-known creature. So try and connect avoiding certain conditions. In fact, since this is the first question, we'll give you an added clue and say this creature is a bird. So habit of a bird. That's all you need to look for in this particular question. That was question number 1. Next. So question number 2. There are rumors that such as the claim that this person devoted 10% of his company's yearly profits to the Ku Klux Klan. So these rumors reflect the misperception that the person owned the venture until the day he died. Whereas he actually sold his interest long before his death. In 1964, he agreed to a $2 million buyout of his US operation by a group of investors. And he turned his entire holdings in the company's Canadian franchisees over to charity in 1965. So even if the owner had contained a KKK donation request, it would not have been legally enforceable given that the deal had happened and he had lost ownership, which means he cannot legally enforce any distributions of profit. Who is this person who even continued to be the entity spokesperson even after the 1964 sale? So someone donating profits to the Ku Klux Klan. So for those rumors to be realistic, the person will have to be white and American, most likely from the South. So that's a good starting point. And then think of what businesses were started by people when they were old and just like a couple of decades before they died. And furthermore, think of the fact that he was the entity spokesperson. And that's very helpful because he is still considered as the face of that entity. He is not alive anymore, but he is still considered to be the face of that entity. As an added clue, the answer is a misnomer. So whatever the answer is, it contains a misnomer in some form. Very well-known person, real-life person. Timeline is, I guess, pretty helpful. The 60s was the decade when this started booming. And it's a franchisee-based business. So think of the most well-known franchisee-based businesses. If you can figure out what kind of business this is, think of the most well-known one. With the person as its face. That's all you need to do with this one. So moving on to question number 3. So a change-up is a type of pitch in baseball. It is thrown with the same action as a fastball, but at a lower velocity due to the pitcher holding the ball in a special grip. So essentially, it is analogous to the slower ball in cricket. What is the name of this particular changeup, mainly used by this guy, Ian Kennedy, in MLB? The image is very helpful. Very helpful image. If you look at Ian Kennedy closely, you can figure out the grip. So there are multiple ways of bowling a changeup. If you figure out the grip is very similar to something from popular culture, hence lending the changeup its name. So think of what from popular culture could that change of grip look like. Pick the most obvious answer. The idea will get you points as long as, of course, the context won't get you points, not too generic, but if you get the idea right, we'll most certainly consider giving points. So the first paragraph is not exactly helpful. This question is mostly all about the image. That was question number 3. Moving on to question number 4. JSC Kimprom is a Russian chemical company which owns an abandoned chemical plant in Usoye-Siverskoye in Siberia. The plant has been releasing mercury into the water and soil, which also affected the local population. The recent Siberian wildfires and the increase in summer heat is expected to cause disastrous effects in the region, parallel to a similar event in a neighboring country from about 3.5 decades ago. As a result, the plant is also referred to as the local analog of a certain entity. So there is a certain entity in a country that is pretty close to Russia. So something happened there 3.5 decades ago. This situation of the JSC Kimprom plant is compared to that event or location or entity, whatever you want to call it. Think of the general context. It's a chemical plant. It's been releasing mercury into the water soil, so the local population is suffering a lot of health hazards. Most helpful part is obviously the word disaster. If you think of disasters in that particular region of the world, this is probably the first thing that will come to your mind. Very well known. So it is essentially known as a Siberian dash. So as long as you can give me what, that will get you your full 1 point. So next question. Sometime after his permanent move to Britain in 1905, he moved to the US to pursue a career in acting. In making a stage name, he dropped his surname in favor of Trevor. He went on to star in many silent Hollywood films, including an adaptation of Jane Eyre. Who is this individual who we know in an entirely different field? So someone in 1905, shortly after he had completed a very important achievement for a different country in a different field. Timeline is very helpful. Different country, different field. He completed some kind of an achievement. Then he decided to move to Britain. So if he's moving to Britain, think of which country he might be moving from, given that this is 1905. And then he moved to the US. So generally actors back then have to be, especially if you're starring in a romantic flick, you have to be physically fit, if that helps. This individual who we know in an entirely different field, almost all Indians know this guy, but obviously not for his acting career, but for something he did for India. I'll make it simpler. He did something for India, then he moved to Britain, then he became an actor. Who's this guy? State of fame is not necessary, although that will get you part points. Who is this guy?
So if I may have to add up, I'll say the person popped back into the news in the year 2004 for his exploits in the previous century. So the person popped up into the news in 2004 for something he did in the 20th century, for all the more wrong reasons.
Yeah, so factor in that as well. He did something in the 20th century and that did not go right. So think of what that could be or who this person is. Although it's probably easier to go from the early 20th century angle, whichever works. That was question number 5. Blank consultant, again blank is indicated. This is external consultant brought in to reduce the headcount in an organization. They are called up when CEOs are uncertain of sacking their employees themselves. So this word became popular in the US in the mid-1990s. The usage is drawn from a 1974 American horror movie. What are such outside consultants called? So very simple, just narrow it down to a few things. It's taken from a 1974 American horror movie. So if you can place your timeline right, there's pretty much only one movie you can think of. Even the name is American, if it helps. The name itself suggests that it's American. And a consultant is an external consultant brought in to reduce headcount. That might be very weirdly helpful. Reducing head count. So think of something basic, try connecting both. So if you were to reduce head count, think of the informal terms of sacking an employee. There are some informal terms used to describe the process of firing an employee. And some kind of things that commonly pop up in firing metaphors. So if you can figure out what kind of things pop up in firing metaphors, connect it back to an American horror movie from 1974, and you will get your answer. Not just employee context, when people step down, people are removed from their position, a certain set of items are generally used in metaphors describing the situation. So moving on to the next question. So when asked about the design of their jersey, the officials in charge of it said, according to scientists, about 8 million metric tons of plastic are thrown into the ocean annually. Of these, 236,000 tons of microplastics, tiny pieces of broken down plastic, smaller than your little fingernail. So essentially the equivalent of one garbage truck of plastic dumped into our ocean every minute. Which team's jersey was made from recycled marine microplastics and had images of turtle, for symbolizing marine life in their jersey? This jersey came to news a few years back. So there's something to do with marine life. So obviously a country very much associated with the whole marine situation. So think of what kind of country it could be. And it's a sports team. As an added clue, it's from the subcontinent. So think of the teams from the subcontinent that might, of course, the extended subcontinent.
Ashwin, the participants want you to give less clues. They are blocking for clues.
Answer. So I guess people are tracking all these videos. Let's not give any more further clues. We'll hold this question for the next 10 seconds in case anyone hasn't caught up, and then we'll move on to the next question. Next. Around half a decade ago, Google came up with a fun April Fool prank that involved finding blanks, again blanks are indicated, on random spots in Google Maps. People who do well at this task would get the made-up job of blank master at Google. So a certain company stumbled upon this, whatever this was, and connected it with one of their existing products called Ingress. Eventually, they came up with something that by 2019 was raking billions in revenue. What did they come up with? I won't be giving any clues for this one. whatever you need, it's all there in the question. You have to find random, you have to find something from random spots in Google Maps. So what can you find? What kind of things can you find? If you can figure out where is what is the ingress connect, then you'll pretty much get the answer straight away. But try and work it out from the initial app, which will be more interesting. Of course, if you know what ingress is, then it's like shooting fish in a barrel. So no further clues on this one. We'll hold on this question for another 10 seconds for everyone to catch up, and then we'll move on to the next question. Alright, next question. So Ella Slack was the manager for the BBC Sports and Events department. Her perfectly apt look, skin tone, height, etc. made her the perfect candidate for a specific job, which enabled her to be a part of many important events like the Trooping of the Colour and regularly appear before the parliament. But she admits that the job profile comes with its fair share of nerve-wracking moments. So what specific role does she fill from time to time? Just have a very good look at the image. That should pretty much give you the answer straight away. No clues on this one. We'll just hold this question for another 15 seconds. You can describe the job role in a few words. You can use 3 or 4 words to describe the job role. Or you can even describe it in a sentence if that's what is suiting you. But if you get, as long as you get the idea right, that will get you 1 point straight.
Hey, it's happening. This is happening now. What's your name? What's your name? Okay, I'll send you the Google form link and.
All right. We'll move on to the next question. Abhinav, next question. Yeah. So Pepsi Blue was a berry-flavored soft drink produced by PepsiCo. It was introduced into the Indian markets a few months before the 2003 Cricket World Cup. Even after that, even after the hefty advertisement, the product failed miserably in the Indian market. So a major reason for the failure was that most Indians were hesitant in consuming this product thanks to its resemblance with another liquid seen in the Indian household. What exactly did Pepsi Group resemble that led to its downfall in the Indian market? So we'll show you an image. Take a good look at that image. This is an image of Pepsi Blue. Look very carefully. There is ice in the drink, so ice in the glass. So think of what it would resemble without the ice. So just take a good look at the bottle. Something very commonly seen in Indian households everywhere. Thanks to a certain government policy, this is very commonly seen everywhere. And Indians don't want to drink it. So think of what kind of substance it could be. That's all the clues we'll be giving out on this one. We'll hold the image for another 10 seconds. So moving on to the next question. From this point, the next 5 questions are chart questions and will be slightly more difficult, and hence we'll go easy on the clues as well. So the 9-dot problem is a classic lateral thinking exercise that gained widespread popularity in the 1970s and 1980s. It is also claimed that the game stems from the corporate culture of the Walt Disney Company, where the puzzle was used in. So in order to complete this puzzle, one is required to think in a particular manner so that the lines would intersect only once. The solution to this puzzle gave rise to a term that is a metaphor for musing unconventionally or from a new perspective. So what phrase came into being from the solution of this problem? Just read the second paragraph very carefully. That should pretty much give you the answer. Of course, to get this answer in the first place, you would have to do whatever the answer is. You have to use unconventionally to get the answer. So think about that. So you have to, I guess that's all the clues you get since this is a star question and that's meant to break time. So it's a phrase, common phrase. You can use you can use 3-4 words. So 5 words actually. You can use 5 words in the phrase. We'll hold on this question for about 5 more seconds and then move on to the next question. Moving on, question number 12. So this guy is a Washington DC based performer who claims to know and be able to relate to every word in a specific set of 1112 songs. He started obsessing on these songs sometime in mid-1977 at the age of 11. So due to liking these songs so much, he decided to adopt a certain stage name to indicate that he is the African American equivalent of someone. What stage name did he adopt? So just take a good look at this guy. Image. So this is our guy. This guy likes a set of 1112 songs. Of course, these songs have a connect, and that connect is the whole funda behind this guy's stage name. I need a portmanteau as the answer. Will not be accepting what is the connect behind the songs and all that. Only the exact portmanteau will get you points in this case. Of course, there is enough clues. He is the African American analog of someone. Look at the timeline. In mid-1977, something happened, and that's what brought his attention to these songs. When something happened, these songs just came back to consciousness as they would. The timeline is very helpful. 1112 songs. So, someone or something very prolific, very, very famous entity. And then this guy does this. Of course, the image is helpful if you look at it from the right angle. So that is about it for the 12th question. Moving on. The arrest of Adolf Eichmann in Argentina was a controversial one, as he was arrested by an Israeli agency in Argentina for crimes committed in Europe. Israel, however, held that the arrest was justified, as his crimes were against humanity as a whole, which validated his arrest by anyone, anywhere. In doing so, they cited an age-old statute of international law, which classifies a certain group of people and their crimes as being against humanity as a whole. So what statute of international law was cited by the state of Israel in Eichmann's trial? So there is, of course, if you can figure out which group of people it is, as long as you give us that, that's absolutely fine. That will get you points. Age-old statute for a rough timeline, I could tell you that it's around 350 to 400 years old. Before that, this group of people used to be very well regarded thanks to their role in expanding many empires of the day. Then something happened and a fallout, etc. happened, and these people came to be hated across the board. And then they developed laws to arrest these people. So people who commit crimes, think of what kind of crimes could be against humanity as a whole. And this is international law. So why would international law be applicable? Put all this together and come up with a nice creative answer. Timeline that I gave also helps, 350 to 400 years, roughly. If you can place it at the right just then you'll get your answer almost straight away. Moving on, question number 14. So the Church of Our Lady was one of the structures that was destroyed in the Allied bombing of Dresden during the Second World War. In 1994, following the reunification of Germany, the church was rebuilt. The authorities wanted to rebuild the church as it was earlier, therefore they used original plans and materials. They hit a roadblock when it came to duplicating the oak doors of the entrance, as it only had vague descriptions about the carving. They had to depend on details from a certain customary ritual, or I would rather say everyday occurrence. Everyday as in, as far as the church is concerned, it happens often, many times a year, to recreate the original doors. So what interesting object was their source material for this drill? So because something often happens in a church, there was enough information available in some form for the people to rebuild the oak doors of the entrance of the church. Think of what kind of occurrence could this be, and think of what else you can connect to this. What can you connect to a church that occurs every often? The pretty important church in Dresden. All right, moving on to the last start question. So this establishment in Bend, Oregon is kept alive by Sandy Harding. She regularly procures her inventory from retailers like Walmart, buying in small numbers from each one. During the pandemic, they decided to take their business to a drive-in model with the order and payment done beforehand. Furthermore, social media publicity, owing to being the last of its kind, also helps in bring more business. So what is this establishment which has long been upstaged by technology-based business models? So there is a certain franchisee. This establishment is a franchisee, the last of its kind in Oregon. And she has to procure inventory from Walmart. Of course, you can buy pretty much anything in Walmart. And they adopted a drive-in model. So they would place the order, customers would place the order and pay over phone, and then they'll come and collect their order. It's the last of its kind. Something that was upstaged about a decade and a half ago. So by the early parts of the previous decade, this business was more or less long gone. So think of what kind of business this could be. Of course, we all use a technology-based equivalent of this. So of course, both these businesses were in heated competition at the time, in this business's day, but then sadly it did not work out for this one. So that's all we'll be saying for this particular question. So now we'll move on to the two-part question. Please fill in your answers in the A part and the B part. Please make sure that your answers are obviously filled as A and B. Don't fill both your answers in one part. That might lead to problems while evaluating the answers. That being said, moving on. So the marketing team from Leo Burnett, an advertising agency, approached this Indian company in 2014 with the idea for a new product. So this new product would use material from a certain entity itself with a historic first to its name, which was dismantled that year in 2014. So the company ended up procuring 3 metric tons of iron, aluminum and steel for a sum of 1.8 lakh Indian rupees, of course. Which company or product? Which entity? So there is a company. They did something with this 3 metric ton of iron, aluminum and steel. that came to be very well publicized, something that is dismantled. And if you need 3 metric tons of metal, think of how big this thing has to be. First of its kind in India. Since then, of course, India has had so many of its kind, as in the entity. And when it was dismantled, the company decided to do something with it. So no further close on this one. Very obvious answer, very well known. We'll hold this question for about 5 seconds and then move on. Moving on, question number 17. So when this industry started popping up in this particular country in the late 90s, they had to look for an international audience. Thus, they took on a specific technique with reference to the products that was distinctly different from the phenomenon that started this industry. So this technique was chosen as it would enable transcending beyond language barriers and creating no translation issues whatsoever. This industry, with the country of its origin in its name, as an added to, it is an Asian export to the world. To narrow it down, an Asian country. So the industry has a name. If you expand one letter of the name, you'll get the country. What technique is this? So product, of course, is a loose term here, given the nature of the industry, but just to place the answer, we've given the term product. So they started using a certain technique because most people outside of that country cannot understand the language. Thus, something would make no sense once you get out of that country. So to avoid that, they decided, okay, fine, we will do this. We will use this technique. Of course, very well known. There is at least one result of this technique is very well known these days. So international audience, very well known industry as well. There's pretty much no one that would not have heard of this industry, and probably no one that has not heard of the particular results that I was talking about. So we'll hold on for another 5 seconds and then move on to the next question. All right, moving on. Since 1985, there has been an attempt to reinforce the long history of this landmark, including a formal return of ownership to the native community. Since then, climbing the landmark was prohibited. However, it came to be noticed that the presence of this landmark on a certain service effectively circumvents the ban. Hence, recently the landmark was removed from that service. So which landmark in the southern hemisphere? Which service? Service is obvious. So if given a service that is very much in use by explorers who are not able to go out during the pandemic, think of the one most obvious answer, that's the service. For the landmark, it's in the southern hemisphere, and it's something to do with the native community as well. So try to place the exact country. Then I think there is only one or two possible answers. You cannot climb it. So think of what kind of landmark this could be. Not the obvious kind of landmark, if it helps. So that's all we'll be saying for this one. For A, write landmark, and for B, write the service. All right. Moving on to question number 19. Levi Meeks was an accused in the Manhattan murder trial of 1800, one of the first recorded murder trials in the US. The carpenter was accused of murdering Guillermo Sands. The sensational trial concluded with an acquittal after only 5 minutes of jury deliberation, which pair, famous for their rivalry, immortalized in popular culture, was part of the counsel for Weeks. So there were 3 people as Levi Weeks' counselor because his brother had very good contacts. which is how he got introduced to these three people. And this is one of the rare instances of these two people actually joining force. Although there was a lot of evidence against this guy, he was acquitted, partially because of the larger-than-life image of both the two of the individuals who represented him. Very well-known people. So write one name in A and write the other name in B. Immortalized in popular culture, that should be helpful. Won't be giving any further clues. We'll hold on this for another 5 to 10 seconds. All right, question number 20. Freshly harvested salt and pepper are placed in these white oak barrels after removing the top layer of wood and torching and cleaning them. This is imperative to eliminate residues from the earlier usage of these barrels. These peppers are then mashed further with salt from a Louisiana salt dough, following which they are left to age for 3 years in a warehouse. What iconic product is created? So, if you can figure out the exact name of the Louisiana salt dough, that salt term is pretty much known as the home of this product, the salt and pepper one. So think of what product would use a lot of salt, pepper, what kind of product would use a lot of that. And it's in Louisiana, that should be helpful. And it's mashed for 3 years, they're aging. So think of what kind of thing this could be. And for the second part, think of the obvious fact that these are oak barrels. And residues from that usage cannot make it to this one for an obvious reason. So the top layer of wood is removed and they're tossed and cleaned. Very iconic product, and the purpose of the earlier purpose of the barrels also has to do with a different iconic product. So write the salt and pepper product in A and write the barrel's other purpose, the other product in B. So two unrelated products, on the face of it, two unrelated products, but they have this interesting connection. So here's what we'll do now. We'll take a quick roll back from 20 to 1. Then we'll give you exactly 90 seconds to fill up your answers in the form, and then we will close the Google Forms. And then we can quick.
So a team joined after the 10th question. So if we could move a bit slowly while cycling back.
Absolutely.
For the first 10 questions.
Absolutely. So for the first 10 questions, we'll go slightly slow. So as to benefit the team that joined late. But the next 10 questions, we will be keeping pace. So we'll go from 20 to 1. And then we will close the Google Forms in exactly 90 seconds. So 20, which product and what purpose are these barrels used for? Please. 90, which pair of people represented Levi Weeks in his trial? Two individuals. Please. Yeah. So which landmark in the southern hemisphere and which service is question number 18. Previous question. So which industry Asian export to the world and what technique? Think of Asian exports and I think you'll come across the right technique. 15. So which company or product? Which entity? That is question number 16. 15, what is this? The last of it. Well, this is the last establishment of what kind? What is this? Please question. 14, what was used to rebuild the door of the Church of Our Lady in Dresden? I specified that it occurs often in a church. Please question. 13, what statute of international law was used to incriminate Adolf Eichmann? So what is the stage name of this guy adopt it because he likes these songs and he compares himself to someone. Previous question. 11. What phrase came into being as from the solution of this problem? Very common phrase, musing unconventionally and whatnot. So for the next 10 questions, we'll just go really slow. So Pepsi Blue resembles what? That letter is downfall in the Indian market. We'll stay on the image because that's probably more helpful. Indians don't want to drink Pepsi Blue because it resembles something. Have a good look at the image and say what it resembles. All right, moving on to question number 9. So what specific role does LR slack fill from time to time? Very giveaway if you look at the image. Just look at the image for a while and you'll get your answer. That's it. Question number 8. So what do you have to find in this Google Maps prank? Or and what did the company come up with? Think of something very well known. If you can figure out what ingress is, you'll pretty much get the answer. Something master. So what would you associate the term master with in popular culture? All right, moving on. So which jersey was designed this way? Marine life. And so think of what kind of country this could be. As an added clue, I said that it's from the subcontinent. All right, moving on. What are these consultants called? Usage drawn from a 1974 American horror movie. I specified that if you look at the title of the movie itself, it suggests that the movie is American. And I also specified that a certain metaphor for firing employees involves the use of some kind of object. And this is one such object. If you can connect that to a horror movie, you'll pretty much get your answer. Got into reduce head count.
The movie was remade multiple times with the same title, but 1974 is arguably the most popular version of it.
All right, moving on to question number 5. Sometime after his move, he became an actor. So who is this guy? He did something for India, and then he decided to do this. And as an added clue, he was in the news in the in 2004 because he did something in the 20th century, and that did not exactly turn out right. Well-known person, almost all Indians would have heard his name. At least all Indian quizzers would have heard his name clearly. All right, moving on to question number 4. So, what entity or event is JFC Chimprom's chemical plant compared to? Think of the general context: releasing mercury into the water, etc. Neighboring country of Russia. Put all that together and come up with a creative answer. Moving on to question number 3. So what is this type of change-up called? That Ian Kennedy, if you look at his arm closely, you can see that he's bowling a specific kind of change-up. If you can figure out what the grip resembles, you'll pretty much get the answer. One keyword will do. All right, question number 2. So who is this guy who was rumored to have devoted his profits to the KKK? So 1964, he sold his business. 1965, he donated part of it to charity. So he cannot donate his money to the KKK. That is the contention. very well-known person. He is still the face of the entity. So think of who this could possibly be. What kind of business could it be if it's a franchisee? And think of all those things and come up with a nice answer. The answer is a misnomer. All right, question number 1. So what phenomenon is this? A situation in behavioral economics. Investors avoiding negative financial information. But it's pretty much similar to a bird doing something. So think of what this could be. So that's it for the prelims. We'll give exactly 90 seconds and then we will close the forms.
So we already have 11 responses. All other participants, please do send your responses ASAP.
Kindly fill that. We'll give you 90 seconds. Please submit your responses.
Also, we'll be discussing the answers right away. So please don't leave thinking that that's all.
Yeah, everyone, please don't leave the screen. We'll be discussing right away. So whoever wishes to stay back and hear the answers, please do so. You can even keep track of your own score. The finals would be announced well in advance for the finals to begin at 7:30.
And one more thing, after the form is closed, I will enable live chat so you can share your answers.
Wonderful. So
In
you can
YouTube.
keep track of that as well.
Yeah.
So in the meantime, let me give a huge shout out to Nambirajan sir for helping us out with these streaming issues. For the past couple of days, we have been discussing how to stream this and etc. So big thanks to Nambirajan sir.
Thanks,
please
Aswin.
watch all the other quizzes on his YouTube channel.
Yeah, thanks for that shout out. I like this quiz. Good research into these questions. I found some of them very tough. Hopefully the participants haven't found it tough, but let's see.
We are at about 30 responses. We'll be close.
We'll hold on for another 30 seconds and then we'll close.
Yeah. 27. Right, last 15 seconds. We give you final 15 seconds.
Ashwin, what is your favorite question in this set?
We'll get back to it when we discuss the answers.
Sure, okay.
Okay, so final 10 seconds.
So this is the final call for submission. Please submit your answers right away.
So we are at roughly 30 responses, 29 to be exact.
29 people have responded already. Please fill in as quickly as possible so that no more inconvenience or cost to anyone. All right, Rahul, we're good to go to close.
We are at 30. We have 36 participants. So should we close it or hold it?
We'll wait for a little while. We'll give one last call. 30 people have submitted for the 16. Please submit as quickly as possible. I guess that clears it up. If anyone is unable to submit your responses, please send a photo to Rahul and we'll try and do the needful.
All right. So the form closes in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Right. So
and that's it for the prelims of second quiz. So now we'll quickly move on to the answer. Nandita, you can enable the live chat so that people can give their answers in the comment box. And we'll keep track of that as well. Might as well give a shout out to whoever is giving the answers right.
Sure, yes, I will do that. I have enabled live chat. Please refresh the page or see the same video again.
Yeah, I just tuned into the stream from my phone, so I guess like that is looking good.
Yeah, I've enabled live chat. We can start with the questions.
Wonderful. So, guys, you can put your answers in the live chat, and we'll give a shout out if you're the first to get an exclusive track or something. So here we go. Rahul, you can take over.
Right, so just a minute. Right, so what phenomenon that was named after a particular creature? We mentioned it was a bird.
Adish Ghosh says ostrich. Arun TP ostrich. Pankaj Jindal ostrich. Everyone says ostrich.
Everyone says ostrich, and of course everyone gets it right. This is indeed ostrich. Dunking its head in the sand. Of course, that's a myth, but you know how the world is. So that's just how it goes.
So who was this famous person who allegedly had, claimed to Ku Klux Klan and was also the spokesperson of the company he found?
Adish says Hefner. Arun TP says Arland Sanders.
And Pankaj Jindal, Javed, and Cynthia all get it right. This is indeed Colonel Sanders, who of course never really served in the military, thus being the misnomer.
Just hold on a second. There is some problem with. There's someone who couldn't submit this.
If anyone is unable to submit, please send a photograph to Rahul and we'll evaluate your answers.
Alright, you move on.
Moving on. So what change up is this? Used by Ian Kennedy. This is the Vulcan change up, similar to the Vulcan salute. So next.
Easy one. Now, easiest questions in this problem. So, which entity are we talking about here?
Chernobyl says Anurag. Chernobyl is the
Yes, Anurag says Chernobyl, and he's absolutely right. This is indeed Chernobyl. This is known as the Siberian Chernobyl. So who is this?
Minamata. Kalyani Kiran says.
Minamata is for the previous question.
Okay.
Who was this person?
So who is this person who moved to? Yes, Arun sir and Adish, I think they all get it right. This is indeed Norman Pritchard, who adopted the name Norman Trevor when he made his acting career.
So in after the 2004 Olympics, Britain claimed that Norman Pritchard had participated under the British flag and not the Indian flag. So that's how he came back to popular consciousness in the year 2004 for something he did in way back in 1900 Olympics. So that was Norman Pritchard.
Aswin, Arun TP sir has a comment for you.
Okay. Yeah, I got that. Sure. We'll keep that in mind. Next. So what will you call this kind of consultant? A very popular term from a 1974 movie. Yes, a lot of people getting it right in the chat. This is a chainsaw consultant.
Actually, I had the same guess as Achintya Sharma. I was thinking it was an exorcist.
So essentially, when people are fired, the sharp implements are often used as a metaphor. They are axed, etc.
Got it.
So similar to that, we have chainsaw because this is doing it also quickly. A consultant is coming in and just wiping people off also quickly.
Arun TP sir gives the movie name. Texas Chainsaw
Oh, you
Massacre.
gave a movie name as well. Wonderful.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
So which team's jersey was made from recycled marine plastic?
Hold on for a few seconds for.
Live chat is going berserk with the answer. This is indeed Sri Lanka. So of course, it's an island nation. That is why the extra attention to the marine situation. Next. What was the result of this prank? If you can figure out what you have to find on a random spot in Google Maps, this is indeed Pokemon Go. Perfect, lovely answer. So Ingress was a game where you had to go out and explore the outside world. Pokemon Go was essentially a build up, a connect of Ingress to the Google Maps part. So what does LFLAC do? Absolutely, Anurag gets it first. This is indeed the stand-in for Queen Elizabeth II.
Shout out to Anurag. He seems to be getting
Audible.
all the questions first.
Right. Not exactly the London game sites.
She's been around for a lot of time. At least 30 years she's been around. So exactly just London.
So what household object did Pepsi Blue resemble?
Again, Anurag to the answer. This is indeed kerosene.
Someone said Harpic. Harpic seems to be Adish and Achintya.
Yeah.
Harpic unfortunately has nothing to do with the government policy, unlike the public distribution system and kerosene.
Yeah, so it's much more popular and
much more common in households.
And usually, like little going to specific, kerosene is kept in these transparent plastic bottles, and Harpic is in
Harpic is kept in a blue bottle.
Yeah.
All right, I don't know. Yeah, does it think outside the box?
So if you have to find if you got to go through all the columns in this box without intersecting each other more than once, you got to draw a line outside the box. So that's how the phrase called "think out of the box" came into being.
So there is this other puzzle where there are 9 dots and you have to connect it with like 4 lines and all that. I was thinking of that puzzle too in this question. But this is a good question.
Not all of them, but we'll be sure to check it out. Next. So who is this performer? What stage name did he adopt? If you can figure out what is the exact connect of these 1112 songs, you're one step closer to the answer. Blindness is right. I would ideally appreciate a perfectly spelled answer. If you can figure out the idea of Black Elvis, that's fine. We'll give you a point. So essentially, he called himself Blindness because he knew every single one of the 1112 Elvis Presley songs. Elvis died in 1977, which is why his songs came back to popular consciousness in mid-1977, August to be exact. Next question.
Right. So what ancient international law was brought back in the 1940s to mainly prosecute the Nazis? So we have Rajaji answering this.
Rajaji got this. This is piracy law. Piracy, all those are acceptable. Conquistador is not exactly right because there is no law against conquistadors, like no international law against conquistadors. This is piracy law. So what happened to this church? What
My
was this?
favorite questions. So
Mine as well, actually. This is my favorite question as well. So Adil gets it right. This is indeed the old wedding photo. The people's wedding album would see the church doors because people are coming out and then they're taking photos.
Oh,
So this is how it
nice.
looked like, and people decided to use that to rebuild the church.
Nice, Funda.
thank you so much.
Kudos to Rahul on this one.
Seems many people got this right. Adish,
A
Anurag,
lot of people got this. So what establishment in Bend, Oregon? It's the last of its kind, and it is uprooted by, yes, Anurag, first the answer again. This is indeed Blockbuster. This is the last Blockbuster store. So brilliantly tracked by the participants. Next. So what did, okay, Javed, very quick to the answer. This is indeed INS Vikrant and Bajaj V the Invincible. So essentially, the 3 metric ton of iron, aluminum, that etc. was procured. That's in the fuel tank of the each motorcycle. Each motorcycle has a few milligrams of metal from the INS Vikrant. INS Vikrant was, of course, the first aircraft carrier for the Indian Navy.
It was decommissioned.
Movie frontal won't work for the previous question, by the way. Blockbuster has to be there in the answer. Next. So what industry and what technique? This is also one of my favorite questions. Very well-known industry. Okay, Anurag got the industry right. The industry is indeed K-pop or Korean pop. That is the industry. So what technique was used to overcome the issue of translation? Cynthia says English phrases, but not exactly English phrases. So just answer slide.
So I guess at least one question was unanswered.
Subtitle says post-skills.
Subtitle.
One question goes unanswered. One part of one question goes unanswered. So essentially, they use acronyms. The initial Korean bands all carried very distinctly Korean names like Shinji and the Boys or something, if I'm not wrong. So when they started using acronyms, you can translate it to pretty much any language. For example, BTS, you can translate it to any language.
Arun sir
That's
likes
the idea
this
behind
question.
using acronyms, which came up in the late 90s. So next question.
How about subtitle?
What landmark is this? And
so this prohibition came into being in 2019 October.
Uluru and Google Maps is almost pretty much the answer. We'll get you 2 points. So the exact service is Google Street View. Uluru or Ayers Rock is absolutely right. And of course, Google Maps. Google Maps is fine. Google Street View, Google Maps, the distinction is, there is a major distinction, but for the purpose of this quiz, that is acceptable. Uluru Rocks in Google is not acceptable. We need you to specify the kind of service, because Google could be anything. Google has a large bouquet of services. So next. So which pair represented Levi Weeks? Yes, point for Google Earth as well in the previous question. This is Alexander Hamilton and Aaron Burr, famous for their duel, and of course Hamilton, who came back into popular consciousness thanks to the recently released Disney movie. Only Aaron Burr and Alexander Hamilton are accepted. So next. Which iconic product is created using salt, pepper from a Louisiana salt dome? Tabasco sauce is one part. For the exact purpose of the other part is still unanswered. And yeah, for the previous question, last names are fine. Tabasco is one part. What exactly is the other part? Okay, the exact answer is still uncracked. So we'll go to the answer.
Tequila, says Adish.
Not tequila. It has to be American. This is Jack Daniels. Specifically, the exact barrels used to ferment the Jack Daniels whiskey is ordered in by the McIlhenny company to ferment Tabasco sauce. Only Tabasco sauce and Jack Daniels get points. Although, since people answer bourbon and it is also whiskey, people who answer bourbon, we might give you a half point. Half points for bourbon. Just whiskey or bourbon variants of that will get you half point. But if you have Jack Daniels, that will get you 1 point. So that concludes our prelims. We took slightly longer time than expected. Apologies for that. But hope all of you enjoyed the set. Please feel free to drop us any feedback. Please subscribe to Nambirajan Sir's channel. And this is exactly where we will be live streaming the finals at 7:30. So we will announce the finalists shortly. So thank you all. Have a good afternoon. Lots of other quizzes also on the deck. So
yeah, there is some feedback. Most people like it. Adish, Basil, Rahul.
Thank you for the feedback.
Thanks everyone for joining the live stream. Yeah, see you at 7:30 in the same channel for the live stream of the finals.
That concludes the live stream, I guess.
Yeah, give me a minute.